Hello and welcome to episode 330 of the Stacey West Podcast. Now, usually I have a clever sum for you here, Lincoln City related, to get to the number 330, but all I will tell you is 330 is the number of beers it feels like I had to consume to keep pace with Dave Adams while over in Germany. The man who joins me today did not keep pace with Dave Adams over in Germany, nor did he keep pace with me. Not on beers, but on days, entire days. We're set to welcome Chris Lamming onto the show. How are you doing, mate?
Hello. I've recovered. Thank you. I've recovered, yes. I think the best thing I could have done, and I'm sure we'll touch on it briefly, best thing I could have done was basically write Saturday off as I did to enjoy the rest of the weekend. But yes, fully recovered now. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good, actually. The day before we went, I did a 10K run literally on the day we went and come back. I slept a little bit yesterday, and then I've done 11K today. So I've kind of bookended a challenging weekend in terms of physical fitness with some running. Now, Germany had a strange effect on you, didn't it, Chris?
Here we go. Well, I know you definitely clipped something up here, so I'm just going to let you introduce it.
So on Friday night, Chris, and our friend Dave went to watch Victoria Cologne play Stuttgart B. Now, it was a long day in your defence. So 2:00 at night, we set off from Rugby to Stansted. We flew to Cologne. We were pretty much off the plane, had some food, beers, out again straight after Victoria Cologne. So it was a long, long day. And you and I had doner kebab for breakfast at about 11 o'clock in the morning, which was actually like a lunch. And after that, there was no food either from 11 o'clock. So at Victoria Cologne, you, as you would, because you're a nice guy, found some people to chat to. And you inadvertently morphed into Steve McLaren, didn't you?
Yeah, and the worst thing is I didn't even realise I was doing it at the time. So I've been trying to learn a bit of German for quite some time, and I can get by, but I'm by no means fluent. And I fully expect that whenever I was speaking in German to anybody, it was with a pretty strong English accent in German. I imagine that exists in some way, shape or form. But there was some chaps who I was speaking to from Dortmund who I spoke a little bit of German. They spoke a little bit of English. We kind of met in the middle. Turns out, without realizing, I was inadvertently speaking in English to these people with a German accent.
There's only one way to really demonstrate it, and that's to listen to the clip.
Outside looking in, like really good, because it means that Bayern don't win all the time, but also they're a factory team and don't take part of the 50+1. So how does that work for you guys?
Oh, that's all I clipped up.
Oh, God.
Because I felt bad recording the conversation after that.
Yet you still recorded it and decided to post it publicly.
Oh, God, yeah, absolutely. Because I think I wouldn't have expected anything less if it was you to me.
True.
Personally. So, yes, a good weekend was had by all. Chris did get his revenge the following morning by making me and Dave a cup of tea and coffee with salt in it rather than sugar. But again, that was probably something that was a little lost in translation.
Well, it was completely unintentional. If it was intentional, it would have been very funny because it would have been a prank that I'd played on you both. But I actually was trying to just do a nice thing and make you both a cup of drink and inadvertently put salt in them rather than sugar. But just to clarify, in the little shared flat that we had, it's quite a small flat, but there was a few amenities. There was a sink, a microwave, a kettle, 3 or 4 little plates, a couple of mugs, and three mugs, sorry. Yes, a bag of white granules that was about the same size as a bag of sugar that you'd get over here. Me being a nice guy and all, or trying to be, so I'll make my friends a cup of coffee, a cup of tea. Dave declared the day before that he normally has 3 teaspoons of sugars in his coffee, by the way, which is absolutely ridiculous. But I thought, oh, well, I listened and I remembered that Dave had 3 teaspoons of sugar in his coffee. So I thought, I'll put 3 teaspoons in then. Yeah. Dave took one sip and then ran through to the kitchen to spit it all out. Turns out, of course, wasn't sugar at all.
But of course, they are merely anecdotes from a weekend that was all heading towards one thing. I'm not talking about Mönchengladbach. Putting 4 of those. That's their goal tune for anyone who doesn't know. Past Werder Bremen, it was all pointing to Buckinghamshire, to Monday night. So we landed in Stansted at 3:00 in the afternoon, not all jaded, ready for the main event, Chesham in the FA Cup, which brings us nicely and rather succinctly onto the point of this podcast, point of this video, which is, of course, Lincoln City. So I think it's fair to say ahead of the game, first of all, Ben pulled off a real coup by getting Alex Horn on the show. I didn't actually realise what size coup it was until I was chatting to Fee when I got back. And she was like, oh, yeah, he was married to such and such. I'm like, oh, right. Okay. So he is pretty famous then. Just me that I wasn't. Yeah, I'd heard
pretty damn famous. Now, both Ben and myself are massive Taskmaster fans, which is kind of our association with Alex and just knowing who he was. I love the show, but I think Ben's an even bigger fan than I am, to be honest. So it was brilliant that he had the opportunity to speak to Alex. I also think Ben did a brilliant job, by the way, on that interview. It was really good. Alex was really insightful and it's really good to get him on. But I think Ben was really good as well. I think it's really worth touching on that because I'd have been absolutely, pulling my pants a little bit, I think, and been pretty nervous if I was interviewing Mr. Horn, and Ben came across really well. But it's really good to get him on. Really big thank you for Alex for giving up some of his time to speak to us lot. But it also gave us some real insight, taking the celebrity kind of status away. It gave us a real insight into non-league football, something that we've, of course, been part of ourselves, but never quite at that level. They're kind of at their highest ebb for quite some time. Even when we were down just one league ahead of them, that was kind of us at our lowest ebb, wasn't it? So we've never really experienced firsthand what football is like as Lincoln fans at the level that Chesham play at. Though we, of course, have played at some similar venues that we went to on Monday night. I loved it, by the way. It's a proper football ground.
It was for me, it was a bit North Ferriby, and I always kind of point to that North Ferriby game. We won 1-0 as we'd been to Burnley on the Saturday and we're at North Ferriby on the Tuesday, and it was just these two worlds. And now I feel like we're part of the first world. I mean, we're not always at grounds like Burnley's, but we go to St Andrews, we've been to the stadium, they're like Portman Road as equal. So we're more of that world now. And we're not really of that world of North Ferriby or Welling or Salisbury or anywhere else. And it did really have that North Ferriby feel to it. It felt to me like a ground that hadn't been built, that had just generally climbed out of the ground over time. Do you know what I mean? Like we'll put some concrete here and we'll put a wall here. And at one point there was just a door at the back of the stand. Like, wonder where that went to. That was all hanging off. And it was proper non-league. And I don't mean that in a negative way, because what I really liked was as soon as we got into town, there was a buzz. We went in the pub for some dinner. A middle-aged couple on the table next to us talking about, oh, there's a big game tonight. What does it mean for Chesham? And people kind of coming in on a Monday night when it's usually dead and the pub's busy. The old boy at the bar knew what was going on, and I like that because we haven't really ever been there. We can talk about our cup run and Ipswich and Oldham, but we've always been a big football team in real terms. We're not a big team in the 92 terms, but we're a big football team if you get all of the football teams in the country together and go, where are Lincoln City? We're in the top 100 or we're in the top 80 or 50 or whatever. So we're a big club. So we've never had that. And I just love experiencing it. And sometimes I go away to these non-league teams in the FA Cup and I come away hating them. Northwich, Victoria, Kettering, I despise them. But as soon as I got into the Chesham, as soon as we got around the ground, I knew, do you know what? I'm going to keep an eye out for this slot now. It was just nice. Even walking down the track and those people stopping us, trying to give us gym things, just seizing on every opportunity that they could as a football club to alert, not us, it wasn't about us, the rest of their community. And to be the main event in that kind of context, for Lincoln City to do that to a football club, it actually felt like a bit of an honour, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I agree. It was pretty special to be part of it, really, because we were the also-rans in a way. We were there to take part, but it was never really about us, was it? And I think we know the benefit that can have on a football club. We've obviously, you mentioned we're not going to dwell on our run. Of course, we've done that enough over the last few years, but we know the impact that can have on a football club. Now, as much as there's two statues of Chesham and us, even back then, is very different, the impact is going to be kind of equitable, isn't it? So, yeah, I think for us, we all know how our gates increased massively off the back of that cup run. It wasn't direct just because of the cup run, I don't think, but we can't deny it was partly due to that cup run, and that had a huge role to play in regards to where we are now. And Chesham were just kind of looking to do that. They kind of average under 1,000 for most of their games, and there was 3.5 times that home fans there compared to what they normally have. So ultimately, if they can get a few more of those people through the gate to come more regularly, plus the influx of cash that this game's going to give them, I think that's going to be massive for them. But yeah, I agree with you. It felt like a real honour to be part of it. I was just really pleased to be there. It just felt like a real good kind of feel good factor. And yeah, it's a sort of experience that you don't get very often. I know we kind of had it at Chippenham a couple of years ago as a club, and it didn't go the way we wanted to. But I think maybe it's because I was there. We of course were in Germany 2 years ago for the Chippenham game. Weren't at the ground for that one. This one, to actually be there and witness it and be part of it was, yeah, I agree. It felt pretty special, though. And we are going to touch on the game in a moment. When we scored our first goal, I didn't realise quite how few Lincoln City supporters were stood in the little area that we were stood in, because there was just us three plus one of our patrons, Dave, and it felt like no one else from Lincoln was anywhere near us, and felt a little bit uneasy when we celebrated that first goal. But yeah, on the whole, really positive.
Yeah, so team selection, there wasn't any real surprises. I mean, but we called JJ McKeon, and we weren't able to do it on a podcast because we'd already left for Germany. But as soon as he did the pre-match presser, you knew that JJ was going to play. Probably a little bit of a concern with no Lewis, no Tom Hamer, obviously no Adam Jackson, 3 centre-halves out. So Tendai playing right centre-half. Eric Ring obviously coming in, probably preferred to whether Dom Jeffries could play on the right, I don't know. But it wasn't a weakened side, as in we've put a weaker side out, but it was a weakened side as in actually those injuries are beginning to take their toll a little bit on the squad, and probably not worth risking 1 or 2.
Yeah, it was a rotated squad. I don't think it was massively weaker. Michael's made a point of saying that every squad he's selected this season has been put out with a desire to win the game, feeling that we've got enough to win the game. But let's be honest, we've had a couple of disappointing results off the back of significant rotation. I thought that lineup was respectful. I thought it was strong, but it was also sensible in regards to maybe Lewis missing out. I'm really hoping that Lewis missed out because it was just protecting him, and it was not to overload him in terms of minutes for his recovery. And I hope there's not like another injury in there that we've not been made aware of so far. Fingers crossed it was just the former. So Tendai popping in at right centre back, I was surprised at. I know he certainly can play that. Played there brilliantly, in fairness. But when the team sheet came out, it was a little difficult to work out who was going to play where, because neither of us considered the fact that Tendai might be right centre back to be at the point that the team came out. I thought, is it going to be Pordy and Sean as a back, kind of 2 centre backs? But then who else is where? But once the team came out and it was obvious who was playing in our regular 3-5-2 shape, it made a bit of sense. I think it was good to get JJ some minutes. I think he really grew into the game, by the way. Really pleased with Jack Moreland. I think it is a players that have had an impact this season, more so than McKinnon. But we know that there's quality in the squad that can add something in various parts of the game. Michael's mentioned all season the importance of squad. And we said right at the start of the season that there's so many players that if you looked at the team sheet and you sort of so-and-so's playing, so-and-so's playing, and it's a couple of changes from the week before, it all kind of feels as strong as each other in a way. And there's no massive downgrade when we change the team around. So I kind of felt like it was rotated without a massive downgrade. But first few minutes of the game, I was a little nervy, I must admit.
I wouldn't even say first few. I'd say first 25, because huge respect to Chesham. They did pretty much what I expected. I thought we might get the early goal and then they would come out as looking for the equaliser. But actually, there was no shutting up shop from the off. They were committed. They were energetic. Now, you would expect those energy levels to drop, which they did. They weren't afraid to go in for challenges, but they were entirely fair in that. Sometimes you get lower league clubs putting a few meaty challenges in, a few that you go, that's a bit out of it. But everything they competed for very fairly. I actually thought they looked like a really good side. For me, I've seen some conference football of late, the odd kind of few clips and matches and bits like that. I thought they looked every bit a decent conference side. They were good on the ball. When they got their opportunity, they were a little bit direct, but it worked for them. They were contesting their head as well, which is kind of a double-edged sword, because for the neutral, it's like, they're giving it a good go, but for us, it's like, oh Jesus, we don't want them to give it a good go. We kind of roll over. Have your belly tickled a little bit? So it was nervy, and I think the moment that didn't change it, but the moment that for me was like, oh, thank God we've survived that, was the Wicken save. It's a header in, because I read a report that said that there wasn't an effort on target before our goal, but surely that was on target. I mean, Wickens has had to claw it away. And the more I've watched it back, actually, the better it looks on the replay than it did in real time. But that's the moment. I've mentioned Roy Essendon in my write-up. And funnily enough, actually, I had Liam Scully mentioning me going a bit of a blast from the past with Liam Essendon. He can remember watching that game as a kid, the Roy Essendon goal for Wickham. And it was like that. It was that moment. And for me, if that had gone in, it's a whole different ball game, because energy runs out, but energy can be topped up by adrenaline, by atmosphere. And if that goes in, the stand people around us, neutrals, they get right involved in it. There's no more neutrality. There's no more kind of ambiguity. It's like, we're going to do this. So for me, Wickens' save was almost as important as the first goal.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, because it was nervy up until that point. They really put it on us, didn't they? And I've seen some comments since the game saying that we were much better when we got the ball down and played a little bit, which is correct. But you can't do that when there's someone like right in front of you, breathing in your face, that's snapping at your heels. You haven't got time to do that. And absolute elite players struggle with that, let alone League One players. So Chesham did everything that they should and almost got their just rewards. I don't think it was us playing badly. I think it's just massive credit to them. They gave absolutely everything. But I felt confident if we could keep them out in the first half, that fitness would show, squad depth would show, and we'd be able to get a bit of control in the game. Because you're right, you can't keep that up for 90 minutes. Professionals can't keep that up for 90 minutes. So chaps who are semi-professional and training twice a week rather than every single day, it's impossible for them to be able to maintain that for 90 minutes. The Wicken save was big. I thought it was probably going to be one of those days at that point. Before it, he clawed it away, and that was good. And then, magical moment from Jack Moylan just before half time, just settled our nerves. There were some good moments in the first half for us. We were by no means poor, but it was just a real cup tie, wasn't it? And where stature and form kind of goes out the window a little bit, which is exciting when you're watching it as a neutral. It's bloody terrifying when you're a Lincoln City supporter and following the favourites, if you will. But Jack Moylan did settle everyone's nerves. Really, really good goal. Obviously took the ball slightly down the left flank, kind of wrong-footed defender before coming back inside, and a brilliant strike across the keeper into the corner. A little bit of quality, I think, which is the difference between the two teams in the first half, because it was a battle in that first half. And, normally that's one of our strengths, isn't it, against opponents in our league. But for us to be almost the big boys and get it done to us was maybe a little bit of a shock at times. So I think some of the younger players maybe did not struggle, but maybe found it difficult to really impact the game as much as they wanted to. And then what Jack Moylan's goal did is it just settled everybody down. And we went in at half time with a massive sigh of relief, thinking, we're okay now. Well, that's how I felt, at least.
Yeah, okay wasn't on my mind. I wanted to get to 2.
Oh, I absolutely wanted to.
Yeah.
But I felt better than I did before.
I still felt... one thing that we at Lincoln City, and not necessarily Michael Scabala's Lincoln, by the way, one thing that we were being certainly criticised for under Mark Kennedy was getting a goal and then we'll defend the box. And I was really worried that we were going to get the goal and then let them come on to us, because, again, a moment would turn the crowd. And it was still the case in the early part of the second half. If they'd come out second half and hit the bar or hit the post or even got a corner and the crowd turned again, I was just really worried for one or two of our players in the atmosphere, because I think one or two of them actually did struggle a little bit. And whether that's the atmosphere, whether it was the pitch, which looked really uneven from our angle, we tried to track the white line across it and it was going all over the place. It looked like rugby's pitch at times. And that's not a criticism for Chesham. That's a reality in non-league. But, Eric Ring, who used to playing on top flight Swedish pitches, wouldn't be entirely used to that. Rico took a real barracking down our side from supporters, and I thought he looked off it a little bit at times. Fred was letting it get to him. I think we could see that as well. And I think if they had come out and come back at us and they'd turned maybe just one or two more of our players, then it could have been an issue. But as it is, you come back out, Fred flick on, and then... Now, I spoke to my dad today about the Makama goal, and something that didn't occur to me at all. He said, well, it was handball, wasn't it? And then I watched it back. And it is, yeah, it's handball. I can't believe it. Yeah, I was gutted. So Fred flicks the ball over. And I said at the time, Jovan's done really well because it's sat up awkwardly, because it bounced up awkwardly. But as it's bounced up, he's gone, and he's kind of hand, arm, everything to catch it, to control it before he's put it in the back of the net. It would have been unfortunate to give and against, but I think if you're in the league, you'd argue it. I think if it's in the Premier League, VAR disallows it. But I thought it was just reward, because I thought Jovan was outstanding from start to finish. One of the young players that didn't let it phase him, played his normal game, didn't get bullied, didn't let the occasion get to him. Every single game, Jovan Makama gets better at the minute.
Yeah, I agree. I think he was great. I didn't realise it was handball either, to be honest. I'd watched the highlights back, of course, as always. Didn't even cross my mind that might have been a possibility. But yeah, Jovan was great in the whole game, and it was just reward. You're absolutely right. But like you say, he's been like that all season. And it's always nice that those kind of improvements are capped off with goals, because as much as the all-round play of our strikers has been commended for most of them, and the goals have been shared around a little bit, strikers are at least on paper ultimately judged on goals. And it was probably the one element that we probably wanted to add. And I think Jovan has been winning a lot of plaudits recently, maybe had won around some of his earlier critics. But there's always going to be those few people who say he's not scoring enough. If he keeps doing that, he keeps scoring, then there's no way that we can criticise him. But I want to have a little mention to Fred, because you mentioned Fred had an indifferent game. I think he certainly put himself about a lot. I think he was very difficult to play against. I think that's often underrated, by the way. We always notice what he does when the ball comes near him. Don't always tend to pay a huge amount of attention to what he does when the ball is not near him, but he's kind of still involved in the all-round play and how he occupies defenders to create space for others. I think that's often underrated. But he did let a couple of moments get to him, certainly. But I think it's an underrated through ball, by the way. Really good reverse pass by Fred to set Jovan free. Really kind of capitalised on the very, very high line that Chesham were playing at that moment. And that really did kill it as a contest. So just before half-time, just after half-time, score your two goals from a psychological perspective is just really, really difficult to deal with for a conceding team. And from that point, that's where it was a massive sigh of relief. It was a sigh of relief when Moylan scored. It was a massive sigh of relief when Jovan got his goal. And to be honest, I could just really enjoy the occasion from that point onwards.
I could as well. I've just watched it back. What it does, it rolls up and he kind of just catches his arm here. So, just to clarify that, 50% of the time, maybe they get given 50% of the time they don't, but it doesn't matter. It went in the back of the net, and that, as you say, was more or less that. And then we could enjoy the game a little bit. I think then the rather partisan home supporters around us, who had been making some outlandish claims throughout the game about fouls that weren't fouls. They were getting in the linesman for not putting his flag up when there wasn't a foul. They were giving Rico a problem. And then after that, I heard things like, yeah, actually that number 10's a proper footballer, or yeah, they're just turning up the heat a little bit now. And all of a sudden, it was that kind of element of get into them, needless claret and blue glasses, everyone's a bad guy kind of thing had gone. And then they're looking at it objectively and going, actually, Lincoln City are a decent side. And we are a decent side. We turned the screw without really exerting ourselves. The third goal, probably a little bit unlucky from a Chesham point of view with the deflection. And then Zayn Nakora came on, which is probably something, it's kind of a footnote, but I think it's a footnote worth noting, because I think he's a player that we may see a little bit more of. I thought he looked really eager when he came on, made some really good runs. He would have scored had he not received a blatant shove in the back. And if the ball had come back off the goalkeeper and not gone in, I think we see a red card and a penalty in the final minutes as well.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's unlucky for the goal not to be awarded to him, to be honest. It's come down as an own goal, hasn't it? Because that would have been a lovely moment for him to come on for his professional debut and get a goal as well. Deserved it. But no, still going to wait for that for now. But yeah, Zane appears to be one of, don't want to put too much pressure on him, but there does appear to be now 2 or 3 names. And Zane, of course, is one of them that are, almost like the next batch that are going to have a potential role to play in and around the first team over the coming years. So yeah, I'm really cautious about kind of trying to heap on pressure. I just think it's really positive to see a new face that we've not necessarily familiar with just yet start staking a claim in the first team and been in and around it. He's been in and around training for a few weeks, hasn't he? Obviously, he's involved in pre-season quite a bit as well. So he's clearly not been far away. But I think what's something that you mentioned to me, or a good point you made on the way back on Monday night, is that it's good to see him, but Michael doesn't give out minutes kind of willy-nilly, that they're always earned. They're always through kind of graft and performance in training and in other matches. It's never just a token gesture. So it was good for him to come on with 10 minutes to go rather than just a couple, so he could actually impact the game a little bit. Right, it's obviously credit to him, the fact that he was involved as well. It wasn't just a case of, we'll give some of the young lads a minute. I think it's something that Michael's been wanting to do for a little while, but it's very much deserved rather than just given.
Yeah, Charlie Parks and Denny Oliver on the bench as well. I mean, talking about the under 18s, I think they've stuffed Shrewsbury this last day or two. Zane among the goals, and a lad called Dakara Weafer, who I'm hearing quite impressive things about as well. And the fact is, people who will criticise and say, well, they won't all make it. No, all of those names we've just mentioned won't all make it. Zane, Charlie, Denny, Dakara, they won't all make it. But some will. There'll be a Sean. We're raving about Jovan Makama, and a lot of fans, by the way, now are raving about Jovan Makama as well. And they were saying he wouldn't make it a year and a half ago. I was saying he wouldn't make it a year and a half ago. But our first goal scored, second goal rather, he scored Freddie Draper to Jovan Makama. Our final goal, he scored Zayn Akora. I just think, again, there's a real reflection there of, or a real contrast with the Chippenham game, where actually we started Freddie, he was hung out to dry. Mark Kennedy sent him out on loan and didn't want him anymore. I just think there's a massive, massive kind of shift and a massive change there. We can talk man of the match pretty much as we want. I picked Sean Rowan again, which is becoming a little bit of a theme, I think, on this show. Me and Sean Rowan. I'm going to soon get a reputation like Ben did with Harry Toffolo. I can't talk highly enough of Sean Rowan. He gets criticised because he does so much, and when he does something wrong, the next time he does something wrong, it's that confirmation bias that people are looking for it. They ignore everything he does right. He is unfazed. He's cool as a cucumber. He's always deadly focused. His tackling is superb. He's got good pace. He plays good balls down the flanks. He's versatile. I can't say any more. I just thought he was excellent. I know Paudie O'Connor played well. Jack Moylan, everyone loves him because he gets the goals and he's got a little bit of flair. Left centre-back isn't a sexy position. It isn't, is it? If you play left centre-back, no one's going to go, oh, wow, you're the star left centre-back. It's like quarterback in American football is great, but linebacker or whatever isn't. But for me, I just think Sean Rowan is... We talk about first names on the team sheet being Jovan or being Tendai or being Paudie O'Connor, but Sean Rowan's got to be printed on there as well, surely.
Yeah, I agree. They might not be sexy left centre-backs, but they're certainly sought after because they're rare to have someone so competent. And I think what's so great about Sean is he can do that kind of hybrid role, because when we play in a 4, he can play as the left back as well. But in possession, in recent weeks, he's been getting kind of forward more and more and more as like that extra forward at times, yet still playing as that third centre-back. So even he's not like a back 3 in like the Keith Alexander era. We had 3 centre-backs that would head it and kick it away, and they were staying back all the time. Sean can definitely be combative. We think, and I've certainly mentioned before, his standout attribute ever since he came into the team has been his one-on-one defending. But actually, I think his in-possession play has massively improved in the last year or so. And he's getting further forward now at times as well. His delivery on the whole is good. I agree with him, mate. I think he's a really, really big player for us now. It does not at all seem like a young player that's just playing in the team and getting some minutes and being given a chance. He is one of our best players and has a massively bright future in the game. He's getting better and better and better all the time. I appreciate we're not just talking about Chesham now. Of course, he stood out against Chesham. I think we're talking about just generally this season, aren't we? And but Chesham was just another example of him. Just being super consistent, really, as well. And didn't let the occasion get to him. I do want to kind of shout out Pordy though as well, because it sounds like he was really unwell going into the game, and he won basically every single duel and header that he was involved with in the game. So that's pretty monumental, particularly when the ball was kind of put on him quite a lot in the first part of the game, first sort of 20, 30 minutes or so, bearing in mind that the two outside centre-backs were Sean Rowan and Tendai, who are not the same type of centre-back when they're playing in centre-back. They're very much full-backs playing at centre-back, really, in terms of how we played with that shape. Pordy had the lone responsibility to win everything, really, aerially, and he did, yet suffering from, an illness going into the game. I think that just deserves massive credit, and it's a testament to his mentality, really.
Was he your man of the match?
Yeah, I think he was.
How did JJ McKiernan do in your eyes? Because I thought he had a really tidy game, because he's like Rob Street, 4-year deal. Perhaps not going to see the best of him at the moment, but I think when he's had his opportunities, he's done well. Whereas obviously, I'm not being critical of Rob now, but Rob struggled to kind of stand out. Did JJ stand out a little bit? Because he certainly stood out to the guys behind us.
As the game went on, yes, definitely. I think one thing that you could never question with him was his attitudes and application. I think he pressed incredibly well, put a lot of pressure on Chesham players. Once we were able to get a little bit more control in the game and we were able to get a little bit more space, I think that's when he really thrived in possession. We can definitely see the value that JJ adds to the team. And we haven't seen really much of Rob Street at all. I appreciate you kind of put them both in the same conversation, in that we'll probably see the best of them in coming years rather than this one. But I do feel that JJ has definitely got something to offer this season, probably more than we've seen from Rob so far. So another player though that's it's almost like just working your bollocks off is a given now. Like that used to be something when you're struggling as a team, you can say, I don't even care if they're not very good. You just want the players to kind of give a damn, don't you? You want them to really work hard. And every single person in the team now, that's just a given. That we don't question that. Even when we get disappointing results and disappointing performances, we never criticize someone for not working hard. But when you're that close to the action and you're literally on the same touchline as him as well for the second half, like you see it firsthand, just the real intensity that they're working at. And I think JJ was a real standout in that regard for his hard work. And then, in possession, he had a few nice moments as well as the game wore on.
So on to the second round. We can now talk about the second round draw without being majorly offensive. The draw was obviously made, I think, were we on the plane or we were on a train? Were we on a train back from...
We was on some mode of transport in Germany,
We were on the train back from Mönchengladbach, I think, when the draw was made, which is Crawley away. It actually feels like it was a week or so ago now, but it was only a couple of days ago. Yeah. Obviously, some of the feedback is rubbish draw. I think rubbish draw in terms of it being long distance in the winter, etc., is bad. Is it a rubbish draw in terms of who we could have got, or we could have got Mansfield away, they're doing well. Birmingham away, they're doing well. So we've actually got a team who are struggling. Crawley have only won one game against League One opposition since August. Admittedly, it was against us and heavily, but that 3-0 will be in the players' minds. It's a really, I don't want to be disrespectful to Crawley, but they were shit when we played them. And how they won 3-0, I don't know. We were poor, but we weren't even the worst team in the game, and they won 3-0. It was just baffling. It's a great opportunity to go there and make a statement and get ourselves into the third round for what I think would be the first time since 2018-19 when we went to Everton.
Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it, since we got to the third round. I completely get the mentality that it's a poor draw, by the way. It's not an exciting draw at all, is it? Middle of winter going down there away. Again, and if they were in League Two, it'd be more than in our league. It'd be more exciting just because you're playing against a team that's not in your league. I think the fact that they beat us and they're one of only a small number of teams that have done this season, does add a little bit of spice to it. Maybe gives us a little bit of extra motivation to go and make sure we do it right. I would normally be pretty confident about us going through to the third round just on the back of the draw. I think with my sensible hat on, still think that should be the case. But there is obviously going to be in the back of our mind that we got stung there earlier in the season. Well, not even that long ago, of course. So there's that little element there, but it's rubbish in regards to it's not really a easily travelable away day. It's not a particularly attractive place to go. It's not a big club. It's not a new ground. It's not someone we haven't played for ages, and to go and experience again. Of all the teams that we could have been drawn against, it is one of the least exciting draws, but it is a winnable draw, in which case we can get through to the third round, hopefully.
It's like when you get fish and chips, and I don't eat fish, so I get sausage and chips with large sausage, large chips, large beans. I get that. And you put the beans all over it. There it is. That's your FA Cup second round. And the first chip you pull out and put on your mouth is one of those slightly shriveled ones that's a little bit black, that you sometimes get that has a different texture to all the others. That's Crawley away.
I get your point. The rest of do you normally have beans on your chips?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah.
I didn't realise you were 10 years old.
Did you not?
I did actually.
From outside looking in, really good.
Yeah, right.
It means that Bayern don't win all.
I can never criticise you ever again, can I?
It's replaced the Pina Colada theme tune, hasn't it? So what do you have on your chips, everybody? Mark Morris is a curry man. Bee's a curry woman. And we went to... So a chip man comes to Ludford. He goes to Donington-on-Bain as well. And I actually had curry on mine the other day, and it was really nice. Yeah.
Curry or mushy peas?
Yeah. Not mushy peas. Oh, my Lord. Is that what you have?
Often both.
Yeah. Freak. Right. Anyway, so I think that seems like a good time for an advert. If you're listening at home, our sponsors, I have no idea who they are these days, but they're going to tell you something about what they do while we take a break. Of course, if you are watching live, that's not happening. You've just got me noting down. So I wonder what other people have before we come back. Mark Morris says he only has them from the chippy. At home, it's mushy.
Oh, what am I doing? I pressed the button. Sorry. Can you put that back?
No. What on earth did you...
Sorry. I meant to mute myself because I was going to cough and I accidentally pressed the wrong button. Apologies. And now we're really small.
Oh dear! I didn't realize. Have you got admin rights then? I didn't realize.
Of course, I didn't know. I don't know. I didn't mean to. I just
so actually, you're so Mark Morris is mushy peas at home. Charlie is mushy peas. David Larder's always both. Dean Wagstaff's mushy peas. Well, all freaks. What's wrong with the Great British Bean? I mean, I assume they're probably not British, but what's wrong with the Great Baked Bean?
Oh, honestly, I'm a fan of baked beans, just not with chip shop chips.
Oh, I went to the Carpenter's Arms once. I was about 19 or 20, and my mum's boss owned it at the time. And I had started eating steak, and I actually asked them for beans on my steak, and they went across to the shop. I think it was a shop in Fiskerton at the time, to buy some beans for me because, it was my mum's boss. Steve Barton likes curry sauce. I'm assuming that Steve gets them from Hunter's, which would be his nearest chip shop, which is where I go. And it doesn't matter what you have on them, Hunter's, they're just outstanding. Steve Turner's salt, vinegar, and scrumps. Baked beans with a steak pie, says Mark Morris. There's two of us then that are 10 in Chris's eyes. And David has mint sauce in the peas. If I'd known that, I would have moved when we stood together on Monday. Right, shall we come back in for the serious podcast? In 3, 2, and 1. Hello and welcome back. If you are listening at home, if you were watching, we've just had a great debate about mushy peas. David Larder puts mint sauce in his mushy peas. I'm not entirely sure about that. When I said that, I actually sounded, like a BBC Radio Lincolnshire morning presenter. A bit Alan Partridgey, that, wasn't he? And David Larder puts mint sauce in his peas. Do you put mint sauce in your peas? Anyway, there we go. We're not here to talk about mint sauce in peas, fish and chips, or anything edible. We're here to talk about Chris Cohen right now, and I'm sure he's not edible. Anyway, so it seems that when I go away, things happen. So also while we were in Germany, we got the news about Chris Cohen. We were on a platform at Cologne train station. Do you know what? It's not the first time I've been waiting on the platform of a train station and had notification about something that's happening in the football world. So I was told we were signing Zach El-Bazedi when I was at Newark train station. And I was also, and this has actually got a Chris Cohen link, I was actually on a train station platform, I think it was Newark again, when I found out that Nathan Jones was leaving Luton to go to Stoke.
Well, isn't that interesting? And of course,
No,
the Stoke
it's
connection
not.
there is, well, yeah, it was kind of sarcastic, I suppose. But that, of course, the Stoke connection is the Chris Cohen connection there, though, isn't it? Because Chris Cohen left us in the summer to go and join Stoke City as a first-team coach, I believe, or assistant manager, first-team coach, I think. And through, I suppose it's a bit of a tough old job, isn't it, when you're a coach that's connected to a manager in a way. So Stoke City's manager, Mr. Schumacher, was relieved of from his position earlier in the season, and Chris Cohen was a unfortunate part of that as well. Lost his job at the same time. So I think there must have been an agreement. It was made clear by Jez, I think, in the summer when it was announced that Chris wasn't moving on to Stoke in the first place, that there was an agreement that, you know, he has a desire to work in the Championship. We all know that he has the ability to work in the Championship. And if an opportunity like that became available, then it was something that the club would be very happy to support with if we were not successful ourselves in getting promoted, which of course we were not, sadly. So he went, and that was that. But of course, he's now returned off the back of losing his job at Stoke. And I think it's massive, to be honest, guys. I think it's probably a big statement, or at least could have a bigger impact than signing 2 or 3 extra players, to be honest. I think it could be huge for us.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I didn't expect it. It just came like a bolt out of the blue. Whether there'd been some chatter on message boards that I'd missed because we're in Germany, I don't know. I would say that we're not talking here like Nick Oxbury was straight on saying, succession plan, and, you know, Chris Cohen as manager with Tom as assistant in the future when Scoobs goes. I don't think it's anything to do with that at all. What I would imagine is that we've offered Chris Cohen a route back into football. He keeps his CV top. I would imagine that the deal is that if something comes up again in the Championship, that he will be able to go and take that. He's very much the Dom Jeffries of the coaching staff, because we didn't expect to sign Dom Jeffries. We'd got our quota of players completely to 1-for-1 right the way through the squad. And then all of a sudden we've got an opportunity to sign somebody who's highly rated, really talented, who will add to the group, but who we didn't necessarily need, somebody that just made us better. And Dom Jeffries came in and added to the squad. And Chris is the same. We had our full complement in terms of what we expect as a fan base and what we've been told we were going to have, as in the manager. We've got 2 head coaches, Tom Shaw, David Rogers. We've got so many other like coaches and things around. We weren't expecting another big name, another person to come in who was going to be David Bridges, by the way. Sorry, not David Rogers. And so it's great that he's come in. Now, I would imagine he probably does some of the stuff he did last time out. He used to spend the first half with the stats analysts. He was very kind of connected to that stats side of things, to that feedback through the game, to the, you know, it'd be very much about shape, very much about numbers. But there'll be more one-to-one sessions, I think, for some of the players now, with 4 coaches of such high quality. You know, they're going to be able to each specialize in certain key areas. We know that Tom Shaw did lots of the out of possession work. We know, obviously, we've got the name escapes me at the minute. So many coaches, I forget them all. The set pieces,
Scott Fry.
Scott Fry, there we go. Does all the set pieces stuff. I mean, it's, you know, the more people that you have putting that input in and adding to the players' kind of days and managing the workload, it's just, you just get better. And anybody who's in any line of work knows that. Like when I used to manage builders merchants, if you'd got your team and you were running your team and you would all had your jobs, and you had somebody come in, it's like, wow, we can now do our jobs better. because we've now got an extra 40 hours a week to allocate. So maybe we can chase some customers from this person, or maybe we can look at our stock profile, or maybe we can make sure that the point of sale is all right. And that's exactly what bringing somebody like Chris Cohen into the club is. He's a bucket full of experience that's poured on a meal that's already sizzling away with flavour and excitement, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like that analogy. It allows specialisation, doesn't it? So when we had the privilege to go and speak to Michael at the training ground and watch training, I think it was at lunchtime, actually, before we recorded anything, I was chatting to him, just asking, what really is the difference? Because we have everything here that we need in regard to analysts, coaches, support staff in regard to fitness and sports science, all that sort of stuff, everything in that regard. So what's the difference between having that all here and what happens at Man City, for example? And what Michael said is there's more of them, which means it allows increased specialization. There's more people to do the same amount of work, reduces workload, means that you can focus more specifically on certain things. Makes total sense, and this allows us to do that. So just to kind of touch on, I saw you popped up a question there on the screen. Any word on David Bridges? Is he still part of the coaching team? Yeah, absolutely. This is very much adding to what we've currently got. It's not replacing. David Bridges came in to replace Chris Cohen effectively at the end of last season. But Chris Cohen has come back in as an extra because the situation allowed, basically. I think there's a couple of things to touch on here as well. Number one, this is obviously would have cost some money to get him in regard to offering him a wage. He's not doing this for free. So I think credit to the board in regards to making that funding available and seeing the value in that, and probably looking at the bigger picture in that regard. But also I think this just goes to show the importance of exiting a football club in the right way, on the right terms, because it allows you to, keep those relationships positive, to allow a situation like this to happen. I think when people leave clubs in a negative way, or there's some animosity there, then this situation absolutely wouldn't happen. I think a lot has been made out of, we mentioned mainly in terms of players, in terms of already looking at an exit strategy at the point that they signed. I think we mentioned that mainly in regards to Ethan Arahan. But I think once everyone knows that, and we're all on the same page, and there's just really grown up adult conversations going on and respect, then it allows this situation to happen if the stars align, doesn't it? So I think credit to the board and credit to the other staff there that create that here we go, bingo card pathway, I suppose, not just for players, but for coaches as well. And I think it's great to have him back, but I think it's nice to just credit everyone else a little bit as well in being able to bring him back, whether that be from a financial point of view or just from a human point of view, in regard to he clearly enjoyed it here. He exited the club in a really positive way, so we was able to bring him back in again.
Yeah, I do think there's lots of conspiracies. Whenever something like this happens, there's lots of conspiracy theories go around about falling outs between coaching staff and people leaving and that sort of thing. I mean, I've just checked. David Bridges is still absolutely listed on the club website, and he seemed pretty well involved on the training session that we went to as well. So as far as I'm aware, he hasn't gone anywhere. I'm just having a look and seeing somebody saying that they didn't spot him at the FA Cup game. I wasn't particularly looking, actually. Were you?
No, I couldn't see that far across the pitch anyway.
No. Okay, that's really really interesting. So yeah, we shall see. So right, let's move on. We have 12 minutes or so. So we will have a preview with Bristol Rovers, with the Bristol Rovers supporter. That'll be on our YouTube channel. We don't now, because we record a day early, we don't usually get that audio ready for in time for the podcast. So it's something additional for you to listen to. So instead, we're going to talk about this weekend's game against Bristol Rovers, which is the first of several long trips that we've got now, including Exeter and Crawley, unfortunately. It's always a bit of a drag down the M5, but they're a team that at the minute are struggling to find their identity. They're one of the teams that you would tend to lump in with us. So Wycombe, Bristol Rovers, us, one of those teams that probably size-wise wants to be established in this division. They have yo-yoed a little bit, I think, not through a lack of investment, but through a lack of sensible investment in terms of playing staff. One might argue paying £500,000 for Promise Omacheri in the winter window was another example of that lack of sensible investment. But we will analyse that. First of all, we will analyse how they play, and who better to do that than Steve McLaren.
Bugger off. It's difficult to say, to be honest. So I think you're saying kind of lacking identity is a really good way of kind of introducing Bristol Rovers in. I have to admit, on paper, I really expected these to be much higher in the league than they are at the moment. They've had a real struggle to start of this season. They have won 3 of their last 5 games, but they've only won 5 games all season. And I think what's really interesting here is who they've beaten in those 5 games. So they have beaten Charlton, which I think is, we're going to touch on that in a moment, but they've also beaten Shrewsbury Town, Burton Albion, Cambridge United and Northampton Town. So 4 teams that are also really struggling. Of course, Cambridge have had a bit of a resurgence recently, but have been down towards the bottom of the table and been one of the worst teams in the league for the majority of the season so far. So all but one of their wins came from teams that were the poorest or some of the poorest ones in the league. They did beat Charlton. They scored 3 goals from an XG of 0.92, 2 goals from outside the box, 1 from a cross and a header. They actually played pretty well in that game, to be honest. So I'm not kind of knocking that performance down. They were 3-0 up at one point in that game. It was a really good performance, but it wasn't consistent with other performances over the season. They have struggled in quite a lot of their games, particularly against teams that you'd expect them to be on a par with in regards to squad quality. Teams like Reading, teams like Huddersfield, teams like Wickham, at least on paper, Peterborough, Wigan, Barnsley, Stockport, Rotherham. They're teams that they've really struggled against on the whole. So, firstly, just in terms of results, I think this would indicate that maybe there's a chance here for us, and we could get something out of this in a positive light. In terms of setup, it's difficult to say because they've played a back 4 in their last 3 games, but in 10 of their first 11 games, they played a back 3, and in 8 of their 13 games so far, they've changed shape at some point during the game. So depending on your outlook, you would either say they're very adaptable, or you would say they're struggling to find their best system that suits their players at the moment. Results would suggest that maybe the latter is probably more true. Now, in terms of metrics, I'm not going to go into too much statistical stuff. There's not a lot here really that jumps out other than set pieces. Now, we know that set pieces are a particular strength of ours. We've scored the most set piece goals in League One this season with 10. We've also conceded the second fewest goals from set pieces this season, conceding 2 goals. Only Huddersfield have conceded fewer from set pieces with 1. Now, Bristol Rovers, well, only Crawley have conceded more goals from set pieces than Bristol Rovers. They've conceded 20 goals this season, 8 of them direct from set pieces, and they've only scored 2 of their own. Only Burton Albion have scored fewer with 0. So set pieces are a massive difference between the 2 teams at the moment. We are good in both boxes, and it would indicate they aren't, to be honest. And another really interesting thing, before I be quiet for a moment, is really interesting piece of analysis on something called the analyst.com, which highlights the areas of the pitch in terms of each of the 18 zones that are normally used in coaching. In terms of where you're most dominant. So how that's worked out is basically all of the touches in open play. This doesn't include set pieces, by the way. So all the touches in open play, do you have the majority of the touches in that part of the box? Is it kind of contested? Is it pretty even between you and your opponent? Or does your opponent tend to have more touches in that part of the pitch? Now, what you'd normally expect is most teams probably have a lot more control over their third of the pitch. It's probably congested or contested a bit more in the middle of the, and you'd expect the opposition to have more control of their third of the pitch. That's what you'd expect to be the case. And to be honest, that's exactly what it looks like from a Lincoln City point of view. Bristol Rovers, not only is it contested, the opposition have more control of the ball than Bristol Rovers do over all their games this season inside their 18-yard box and also on Bristol Rovers' left side of the pitch from a defensive half. So all down of our right and in Bristol Rovers' box themselves, their opposition is more dominant than they are. So that stood out quite a lot to me, to be honest, in that it shows that quite defensively there is a weakness there from their left-hand side of their defence. So that could be something that we can exploit. Plus, of course, set pieces is hopefully something that we could exploit as well. So with those little nuggets of information, there is something there that hopefully allows us to go into this with a bit of positivity. In terms of other underlying metrics, they're quite Northampton-ish, to be honest. So maybe a similar sort of style of game to the Northampton game, but we'll see.
So their left side, Clinton Mola, I think, is the left wing back or the left back, who 23. He's only really played a handful of games. Just looking him up here, he's started 38 senior games in his career. So there's a bit of an experience, and ahead of him on the left, certainly in their last league game against Exeter, is somebody at the other end of the scale who has played over 450 games, which in terms of Scott Sinclair. So I find that quite interesting. Real age, real clash of experience. Now I've done a little bit on their players, because whilst you do set up, I do want to still have a niche. And when you start talking about stats, it's very, very hard to find anything that you haven't already covered. So Promise Omocheri was the big one for me. Really liked him when he was at Fleetwood in terms of his potential, whether as a lone centre forward or not, which he has been playing, I'm not sure. Now, he was injured in their 1-0 defeat against Reading on October the 26th. He was touch and go for their FA Cup game against Weston-super-Mare and didn't make the squad. So whether he plays or not, I'm not sure. Now, if he doesn't, obviously that's going to leave them significantly weaker up front. And they've got real experience if he doesn't play in Chris Martin, who Norwich, Crystal Palace, Fulham, Derby, he's 36 years old. He's the instant replacement for him. And they do have this really in my opinion, this absolute kind of contrast in terms of their age. I mean, they've got Grant Ward, he's 30, he's been around, he's been at Ipswich, Chris Martin, Jamie Lindsay. They've got some real experience in their side. It felt to me in pre-season like they were making some good signings. They signed Isaac Hutchinson, who was at Walsall, who was phenomenal at Walsall. He's really struggled. Now, on October the 2nd, Matt Taylor had a frank discussion with his squad about how they were underperforming and how it could cost him his job and all of that sort of palaver. Since October the 2nd, they have won. They beat Burton Albion and they beat Shrewsbury, but they've lost 4-0 to Swindon in the Mickey Mouse, 3-1 away at Huddersfield, 1-0 to Reading. They lost 3-2 at home to Exeter in the Mickey Mouse. And then they beat Weston-super-Mare 3-1. But actually, it was 1-1 in normal time. And then it's this whole extra time in the first replay thing. Weston-super-Mare would have had a replay. It would have been the biggest game in their history. And I think that would have been real pressure for Bristol Rovers. So they've been a beneficiary of the change. Also, we get a former imp coming back, don't we? In Josh Griffiths, who is on loan there in goal. Now, of all the goalkeepers that we've had, going right the way back to, and I'm going to go back beyond Alex Palmer, I'm going to go Matt Gilks, Josh Vickers, Ryan Allsop, probably every keeper that we've had back in the Football League since Paul Farman. I think Josh Griffiths was the one that had biggest amount of errors in him. He was the one that just looked a little bit shaky. He was the one that you could put under a bit of pressure, and actually he might drop something. But it's a tough trip. It's always a tough trip to Bristol Rovers. It's a long way down there. Even if you have a night in a hotel, I can testify that just travelling somewhere beforehand, you don't necessarily get a good night's sleep. Not when you have a man breathing like Darth Vader and another one playing a disco in his ears all night to mask the breathing of Darth Vader. So, joking aside, a night in a hotel isn't always what it's cracked up to be. So I think it's going to be a difficult game. But given the balance of results recently, I think it's one that if you're Lincoln City or if you're any team that wants to finish in the top 6, this is a game that you go and win, and that underlines your top 6 credentials. It's not one that you must win if you want to finish in the top 6, but it's one that if you do win, you go, yeah, that's expected. They're a decent side.
Yes, I think there'll probably be, from like a neutral's perspective, if you didn't have an association with Lincoln or Bristol Rovers, you're looking at this. You look at the two squads. I probably think they're not massively different in regards to quality. I think we maybe just edge it, but you're looking at performance metrics over the season, particularly the set piece element. I think you look at this, think Lincoln are probably going to edge past this because they're good at keeping teams out and they're a set piece threat. So yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons, one of the skill sets that will give us a shout of being in and around a playoff conversation. And as you just mentioned, if you do come away here with 3 points, it kind of backs up that mentality, doesn't it? So nothing is particularly won or lost if we don't win here. But I think we've got a good chance of doing so, certainly. And it's another not massive statement, but at least a statement that shows our consistency in our threat and solidity, really, if we can.
Do you know the last time we lost a regular season Football League game at Bristol Rovers? How many years do you think it's been? A quick guess, because obviously it's dead air.
Good point. 10.
20 years.
Oh, my God.
We lost 3-1 at Bristol Rovers on Saturday, the 1st of May, 2004. Funnily enough, Lee Thorpe scored for them. Since then, we've drawn 0-0, 0-0, 0-0. Then we lost there in the playoffs, 2-1, but that wasn't a regular season game. After the playoffs, we didn't play them again until the conference, and we lost 2-0. And then since being back in the Football League, we've won 1-0, 6-3, and drawn 1-1.
There we go. Well, that's a good omen then, isn't it?
Yep. And the 1-1 that we drew was where Josh Grant scored for them in about the 100th minute of added on injury time when we were at the Punk Festival.
Of course, yes. I remember that.
There we go. Right. This is the Stacey West Podcast, and we are able to get you answers to questions as they are asked. Earlier on the show, it was asked by Mr. Freeston. Any word on David Bridges? Is he still part of the coaching team? The best Lincoln City podcast has got you an answer while we're on air. How about that? So I've mentioned Liam Scully and said, is he still with the club given Chris Cohen's return? And he's put, the answer is yes, very much so. He's currently genuinely away for a major family event, which was agreed before he joined, and it's bad timing for the optics. So there we go. David Bridges is still part of the Lincoln City coaching staff. Chris Cohen is very much a senior part of the training staff. Now, that is the end of episode 330 of the Lincoln City podcast. We've had a great amount of fun over the last 12 or 13 days. Chris and I have taken in 5 football matches across 2 different countries. We've watched games in the top flight. We've watched 4 games from the 3 games from the third tier, 1 in the FA Cup. We saw 4 home wins. We saw 1 away when we've seen 2 red cards. We've seen, I'm not even going to add up the goals, a lot. And in the last 2 games that we've seen, the team that we were supporting both scored 4. Let's hope for the same at Bristol Rovers at the weekend. Now, before we go, I do just want to play this once more time.
All the time, but also they're a factory team and don't take part of the 50+1. So how does that work?
I hate it so much.
From outside looking in, like really good, because it means that Bayern don't win all the time.
Stop it, please. Stop it now.
There we go. Oh. That's the last time I'll play it. Steve McLaren's embarrassed. I'm delighted. I'm going to have meatballs and pasta. I don't know what he's going to have. He's probably going to have mushy peas on his chips. We've been the Stacey West Podcast. We have been enjoyable as ever, I hope. All that remains to be said is, up the imps.
Up the imps.
Lincoln City are the team, the race is their name. Sinsel Bank is their home ground and football is their game. So come and cheer them on, you lads, support them all the way. Oh, 'tis hardly life for the red and white, the imps are here to stay.